Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the MMA Sucka Podcast. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tim Wheaton, joined as always by the one and only, the editor-in-chief at MMA Sucka, Frazer Krohn. Frazer, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm all good, mate. We were just discussing off air. We've got news, we've got reviews, we've got a couple of previews for this week. But, you know, the big news that came out this week, Kingpyn Boxing, the influencer boxing scene, is on its knees. There was potential, you know, we had the semi-final this Saturday night live from Dublin. There was potential that it wouldn't even go ahead.
Yeah.
Went ahead. It shouldn't have gone ahead. It was awful. But
you know, so there's actually a few folds to this. Like, I thought Kingpyn Boxing was, I'll give you a few thoughts and then I'll throw it back to you. I thought Kingpyn Boxing was actually out of business, and here they are doing an event. And point number two, that goth girl who's like 6'5", bodybuilder, she's cool as hell. I like that girl a lot. Other than that, I don't think there wasn't much going on, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I put myself through it, so you guys didn't have to. So you're welcome. You know, I watched the card in slight detail. I'll be honest. If I missed 4 out of they all went to every fight apart from one was a decision, and that was because a pro boxer fought a guy who. A pro boxer fought a guy who I can't even think of an analogy, doesn't know what boxing gloves are. Probably, I mean, yeah, he got a jab to the stomach and ran like Chelsea Chandler. It wasn't a good look. But, you know, we got some competitive fights, and the main competitive fights were the two MMA guys, Kean Cowley and Kiefer Crosby. Yeah. What I really did like, though, about this card, I mean, like you say, the big 6-foot bodybuilding goth girl.
I just like her. She's not that great of a fighter. I just like her as a person.
Realistically, she's what? She's 6 foot, so she's considerably taller than everybody else in the tournament, and yet she tries to fight on the inside. Is she training with Stefan Struve or what? Like, come on. You've got all the advantages, use them. But no, we obviously had the infamous moment of the blonde girl winning and then lifting her shirt up. We obviously saw that in BKFC with was it Ty Emery a few months back. It's a little bit of a shame because the influencer boxing scene for me is definitely a younger audience. It's, you know, from anywhere between say 13, 14 to 20 years old. They were live on DAZN, and DAZN kind of saved Kingpyn, you know. Like you say, it was looking rough. They looked like they had no money, and then DAZN sort of put it on their platform and kind of saved them a bit.
Yeah.
For her to go and do that on a show where you've kind of been saved by a subscription only platform, where you know, she wasn't on late. I think it was maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock time, on a show that is predominantly watched by children. I don't know. I mean, I watched a face-off between her, the two blonde girls, Danielle Hemsley, and the Miss Danica, Polish influencer, I believe. Mm-hmm. And she was sort of just shaking her chest then, and then she wins a lackluster fight, and then lifts her top up. I don't want to say that, you know, someone rally around this girl, because clearly she just sees herself as a walking chest, which is not a good look. And Eddie Hearn, you know, Eddie Hearn wasn't happy about it, obviously, with him having his links to DAZN and whatnot. So it was just, for me, that's kind of influencer boxing. But what really put a stamp on the night for me, you know, she's grabbed all the headlines. What should have put a stamp on is the guy that won the main event. It's King Kenny from Beta Squad. Now, he showed some pretty reasonable skills, pretty decent, you know, really, really good jab. Was rocking the head back of Whindersson Nunes, the Brazilian influencer with millions and millions of followers on Instagram and probably on TikTok and Facebook and all this. Mm-hmm. But he is what influencer boxing needs to be. He put on a show. He was dropping his hands. He was throwing hands out, you know, to the side. He was dancing around. And that is influencer boxing for me, because we all know, everybody that watches it, I would like to think, you know, especially, you know, us guys in the sport, know that these guys aren't fit to lace the gloves of amateurs that have made that are 0-10. You know, amateurs that are 0-10 would beat these guys. Let's call a spade here. But he went out there and beat what was in front of him and put on a fun show. It was entertaining, and that's what it is. This is combat sports / sports entertainment. It's WWE sees boxing for me, and that's exactly what this King Kenny did. You know, he was dropping his hands, he was dancing around, he was sticking his tongue out, but he got the job done. And you know, he did show an improvement from his last fight. But this is what it is for me. It's entertainment. We know that these guys aren't gonna, you know, go on to face the Canelo Alvarez's, the Tyson Furies of the world, the Terence Crawfords. I mean, stranger things have happened. We'll go on to talk about that in a second. But we know that these guys are not good boxers. So to put on a show like that, to have a bit of fun with it, to entertain the crowd is what it's all about. These guys pay their hard-earned money to go over to Dublin. You know, I imagine that the final, the Kingpyn finals, it's quite an entertaining sort of idea as well, to have this tournament structure of, you know, you have the winners, then you have the losers bracket. The losers will probably face each other in the next. But you know, you can follow these guys' story. Oh, last time I beat so and so, and you know, you struggled against so and so, so therefore I should beat you. We know that's not how it works, but it's an entertaining from, if you're into that kind of thing, if you're into your, you know, your YouTube and your TikTok and your Instagram, your influencer scene, and this is what King Kenny really showed. I think he showed legitimate skills, legitimate improvement, but also he entertained the crowd, and that's what it's all about. This is what influencer boxing is all about.
Yeah, creating moments on social media, really, of like these quick moments where he was dancing, where he was showing off. As lame and corny as that is, that was the stuff that really tracked on social media. And like you said, for this kind of nearly freak show sport where it's really about attention and stuff like that, that's great. That's exactly what, if you want to stay in business, you need something like that. But let's talk about that girl's breasts. So let's go. The weird thing, the timing of it was odd because Ty Emery's was great. She knocked the girl out, and then while everyone was cheering, she got topless on the side of the ring. So the energy was good. That blonde girl, it was after the fight and after the decision had been read. It was just kind of awkward.
Yeah, it was. For me, she wanted to do it irrespective of whether she won or not. And whether, you know, I imagine she has an OnlyFans profile.
Yeah.
Whether she's doing that to try and boost her OnlyFans profile, I imagine that kind of thing works. From what I understand, the majority of the girls that were competing on the show are OnlyFans models, performers.
Yeah.
So they're not doing it because they love the sport of boxing and they really want to win this Kingpyn tournament. They're doing it so that people see them on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, you know, alike, and think, I'm going to subscribe to their OnlyFans. That's the only reason they're doing it. They're not doing it for the love of the sport. These girls, I mean, I watched the opening semi-final round. The girl that did flash her lift her top up, the opening round, she was god awful.
Yeah.
This round, she was god awful. She's making and she's training at I think she trains in Birmingham with Leon Edwards' team, and you know, alike, and that's worrying. That's worrying. That, I mean, there is no improvement. Yes, she could take a smack a little bit better, but they're not doing it for the love of boxing, but you know, these guys and girls know what they're doing. They know, she knew by doing that she would go viral on, of course, Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and whatnot. More people were talking about that than were talking about the entire card itself. And you had some, you know, a competitive women's fight on there in a different fight. You had this, like you say, this 6-foot goth girl.
She's interesting.
Tattoos and all. You had, you know, an MMA fighter fighting a Geordie Shore reality TV star, which actually turned out to be a pretty competitive fight. And it, like I say, in the main event, you had quite a good performance from a guy who just gets it. And yet she was the one that went viral.
Yeah.
Clearly, she doesn't care. Clearly, she said that she got clearance from Kingpyn to do that beforehand, which I can't imagine.
No, she did. There's no way.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. They sat down and she said, "Well, if I win, I want to lift my top up," and they said, "Go for it. That is exactly what we want." No, that didn't happen. And to me, it's a shame that she feels that, oh, I won. Yeah,
It's awkward. It was a weird time to do it, and it was a weird place. Like, get on the rings or something. Like, if you're gonna make a show, do a show.
And especially as the other girl came over to sort of hug her and congratulate her, and she's sort of like, it's just like, oh god, this is YouTuber boxing 101. It's two guys in one night. It's tag team boxing. I don't think we're that far away from the old WWE sort of bra and panties boxing. I don't think we're too far away from that. The early 2000s Attitude Era WWE and influencer boxing merging. Let's be honest. It's I think we're a little bit too close to that for my liking. But it is what it is. She did it. She went viral. She gets the game. But we managed to speak now for 11 minutes on something that was god awful. So, props to us. I'll be honest. I didn't think we could do it, but we've done it.
But you know what's funny about Threads? Because you mentioned Threads there. It's because we don't follow a lot of people because it's just starting. It auto generates what you think you're into. And because I follow so many people from Thailand because of Muay Thai, it was auto-generating a bunch of like ladyboys advertising from Thailand. I was like, oh, Threads. No, I don't know. No, Threads.
A little bit, guys.
So I stopped using it for a bit just because it was like, it's not generating the right stuff. But anyway, let's move forward into like not freak show fighting. And we're not going to call it that, but let's get some unique takes here. Because last week, after our last show, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it. It feels like old news, but we haven't discussed it yet. But Francis Ngannou has been confirmed to be fighting Tyson Fury. We don't know everything just yet. It sounds like it's going to be fully boxing rules. Exhibition versus professional, it's not entirely clear yet. The titles won't be on the line. There will be a rematch clause, and I believe it's 10 rounds. But I mean, there's a few shades that I want to throw at you. And then we'll kind of open it up a little bit more. And then we'll get to the UFC stuff and stuff. But when the book is written on Francis Ngannou, when the documentary is shot, when this guy chooses to hang up the gloves, he will have lived one of the most interesting and fascinating lives of any human in humanity's history. And I mean that, not just because I follow the sport so closely or anything like that. This guy started in a Cameroonian village, and within 10 years, within 15 years of lacing up gloves in a gym that he was living at because he was homeless, he's fighting one of the lineal boxing heavyweight champions who's undefeated. What a fascinating and interesting life this man has had, and good for him for every step of the way, betting on himself, gambling on himself, believing that he could get it done. Imagine holding the lineal UFC title and then telling the organization to F off. And then it works somehow. Like, you don't get buried in the industry, you don't get blacklisted, it works. Randy Couture couldn't even do that. And he tried the exact same thing, and it didn't work out. However, it's a bit of a silly fight. Style, mechanically, I mean, Francis Ngannou is going to struggle in this fight. I have no doubt about that. And I definitely think Tyson Fury is doing everything he can to not fight Usyk, which is a dang shame. But Frazer, let's get some hot takes. What do you think? What do you see? What do you make of the matchup?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I echo everything you're saying. And let's not forget, Francis fumbled the bag.
Yes.
he made the mistake. He left the UFC. That was Francis' mistake, a massive mistake. He's never going to earn as much in Bellator, in the PFL, in bare knuckle, in one. And yet he signed a deal, the perfect deal for him by the sounds of it, with the PFL to box and compete in MMA. Now, let's not forget, he fumbled the bag. He will never get as much money as he got in the UFC. Well, within it's just over a year, I think, or 18 months since he last fought. And yet he's already signed to make more money out of his one boxing match, one boxing fight than his entire UFC career combined by what I've read.
Yes. They said it was 8 figures, not 8 million. So he's probably getting a Saudi cut. He's probably getting paid up front plus pay-per-view sales on the last part.
And let's not forget, he's had three pay-per-views in the UFC, one behind closed doors, two in packed out arenas. He's had multiple Fight Night main events. You know, he headlined against Curtis Blades, Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos. This guy is a megastar. and he's only just making his boxing debut. And he's, like you say, he's making not 8 million, 8 figures. This guy is setting up not only himself, not only his family, but this is generational wealth that he's going to be getting from just this fight.
Yeah.
Think about the sponsors that are going to want to get involved with Francis Ngannou. Let's not forget, you can't get sponsors in the UFC on Fight Night. You can get sponsors, outside, but for training camp, you need sponsorship really to pay for it. But imagine the sponsors that are going to get involved with Francis Ngannou. Imagine if Francis Ngannou, I know he's a Gymshark, or he was a Gymshark athlete. Imagine if a Nike, an Adidas pick him up. Imagine how big this will be. And it's not really long to wait. We're mid-July now, 18th of July today.
Yeah.
End of October. That isn't long to wait at all. We've got essentially 3 months, 3.5 months, or 3 months until the mega build-up. He's going to get beaten pretty badly in this fight.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
But if I was Francis, I'm going in. I've got a puncher's chance. Unfortunately for Francis, Usyk has faced pretty much everyone that faces Fury.
Yes.
Pretty much everyone that faces Fury has a puncher's chance. He's one of the best boxers out there, actual boxers, the craft of boxing.
Yeah.
Hit and don't get hit, know when to clinch. So everyone's got a puncher's chance against Fury. They need that puncher's chance because they're not going to outbox him over 12. He's had 3 back-to-back fights with a guy who's notoriously heavy-handed in Deontay Wilder. Or 3 fights, not back-to-back. He obviously had the Otto Wallin and Tommy Schwartz fights in between.
Yeah.
When's the last time he had a competitive fight? It wasn't Derek Chisora. That was a money fight for Derek. It wasn't really Dillian White, although on paper that was. It didn't play out just as such. It was probably the last Deontay Wilder fight.
Yep. That was a while ago as well, and it was good.
I mean, that was 20... I can't even tell you. I'll have a quick look. But I can tell you now, it was a long time ago. It was Deontay Wilder 3 was 2021, October 2021. So it'll be two years since he had what we can say a competitive fight. This isn't going to be one of those competitive fights. I don't think this is going on. Well, from what Francis said on Helwani's show yesterday, apparently it is going towards their professional boxing record.
Okay, good. Yep, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's more threat in this fight for me, for Fury, than there was when he fought Derek Chisora. But I think Fury could fight Ngannou 7 days a week and beat him 7 days a week. This is not MMA. Yes, Francis was essentially a heavy-handed boxer in MMA. We didn't see him throw high kicks. We didn't see him throw leg kicks. He was brutal with the elbows when he got on the inside. But his last fight, we saw him wrestle because he was getting outstruck by Cyril Gane.
Yes, he was. Yeah, that's
and Cyril Gane is not the boxer that. And let's be like we saw with Conor McGregor in the build-up to the Floyd Mayweather fight.
Yeah.
Conor got Paulie Malignaggi in there. He got Conor Wallace in there. He had to get guys in to learn the game of boxing.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And Conor is what they fought, 153 or 140, 149.
Yeah.
A reasonable weight for the majority of the population will fit into.
Yeah.
How is Francis Ngannou, whether it's in Vegas, France, Saudi Arabia, how is he finding enough guys, not only who are 6'7" and 300 odd pounds, but that can move as fast as Tyson Fury, and legitimately test Francis Ngannou in the game of boxing? He's not going to find these guys. These guys don't exist. This is why Tyson Fury is so good. I hope he leaves Extreme Couture for a little while. Like, he can't do this boxing camp at Extreme Couture, right? You'd really hope not. I think that was a big mistake that McGregor made, was that he kept his striking coach from MMA and Owen Roddy. Phenomenal MMA striking coach.
Absolutely.
When you have to stay all the way out of range because of leg kicks are there and the wrestling game's there. John Kavanagh, great MMA mind.
Yeah, he is. Not
the best boxing mind. And we saw we are making the comparisons between Mayweather and McGregor and Fury and Ngannou, because that's the only comparison that we really have.
Yeah.
Mayweather went through 4 different plans. He fought Mexican as far as putting his head on McGregor's chest. He then fought on the back foot. He then fought on the front foot. He was then counter striking. He was moving. He let McGregor gas out. McGregor had one idea, one boxing plan, the plan A, and plan A wasn't working. And there was no plan B. And that, as we saw, obviously TKO'd in the 8th or 9th round.
Yeah.
Francis has to have... I can't remember the last time we saw Francis throw a jab. Francis is wide hooks, and these wide hooks allow Fury to get straight underneath with an underhook, lean on him on the side of the ring, and tire him out. Fury knocks Ngannou. Either Fury does what Fury does, dances around for 10 rounds, half an hour, and wins the fight with ease, or he knocks him out 6, 7, 8 after tiring him out. And I don't think he knocks him out cold. I think he knocks him out, TKOs him. That's the way that this fight is going to go. Fury either does Fury things, gives the fans what they want, 10 rounds of action, but 10 rounds of dominance for Tyson, or he knocks him out and says, puts a real stamp on it. I think the rematch clause, I imagine, will only be in favor of Fury. I don't think Ngannou will have the rematch clause, but Fury has trained MMA. Why not then put them in an MMA fight together? I don't think Fury will be able to get out of his boxing contract with Frank Warren and the guys over there.
And that's the issue, isn't it? Because he can't make as much money in MMA because of the way the pay structure is. The MMA is leagues, whereas boxing is like you're a free agent. You're not a free agent, but you can be your own promoter, and you can't really do that in MMA. But if it's set up otherwise, then maybe they would do an MMA fight, right?
For sure. And I think that would that would entertain me far more if they said, look, we're going to have a trilogy fight. We're going to have a boxing, an MMA, and then a pull out of the hat, boxing or MMA.
A Greco-Roman wrestling. We'll see who's worse.
Exactly. Let's be honest. Fury wins the boxing, and Ngannou wins the MMA without question. There's no question. One leg kick to Tyson Fury, and he's hobbling.
Yes.
It's fun. I'm
fun.
So happy that Francis is finally getting the bag that he deserves, because I think he's been really badly mistreated in his MMA career.
Well, he said he lost because of the sponsorship policy in the UFC, he lost like a $30 million sponsorship at one point. So directly he's losing money by staying in the UFC. And like you said, with his sponsorship stepping out, a lot of those people are going to come knocking once again. He's probably it's not just the fight that he's walking away with maybe 50 million. It's the sponsorships he's probably making close to that.
For sure. What I do question is the pay-per-view buys in America, because it's UK time. It'll be 8 o'clock. 8, 9 o'clock ring walk UK time. Are the US guys going to get? Don't get me wrong, it'll sell. It'll sell. Would it have sold considerably better in Vegas? I think so. But would they have got paid more because you're getting weighed in by the Saudis? I don't think they would have got paid more, but they probably would have done more pay-per-view buys. It's finding that happy medium between the two. Supposedly it was supposed to happen at Wembley. Francis said that it was supposed to happen at Wembley, but the Saudis kind of came in and said, look, we'll just pay you more. And Francis Ngannou said, fuck it, yes. And I'm not mad about that at all.
No.
I don't mind it. I'm it is what it is. Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. It's borderline influencer boxing, borderline freak fight, borderline people may think it's competitive, because we will see footage after footage after footage of the Alistair Overeem knockout, of the Stipe Miocic knockout, of the Curtis Blades knockout. Insert knockout here kind of thing for Francis Ngannou. I'd be interested to see if the UFC allow the footage to be used in the promo.
I was going to say the same thing.
They might just be petty about it and say, "Oh, you're not using any of our footage."
Of course. Why? I don't think they will. The only interesting fold that I could see is perhaps ESPN being like, "No, this is one of our guys. This is actually a show that we're co-promoting. We're partially promoting this. The UFC, you have to play ball with us. Like, the UFC's contract with ESPN is up in 2024. They can't start playing hardball with ESPN, or else something's going to happen. But I think generally looking at in the past, the UFC is not going to do crap. Like when a bunch of their guys went to Pride FC in 2003, they only gave them photographs for Pride to use. Like they're not going to. I don't think they're going to give Tyson Fury footage. I think they're going to give him some photographs to work with.
Exactly, and it's not like, again, we'll use a comparison of Mayweather and McGregor. That was co-promoted with Dana White.
That's right.
Dana White was all in on that. He put more emphasis on that than I can think of any actual UFC fight in recent times, which is shit for UFC fighters, but it is what it is. Dana's going to go where the money goes.
And imagine the UFC right now kicking themselves because with the Conor fight, apparently Conor was making $100 million, of which the UFC took half of because they were half of his promoter. So the UFC would have walked away with $50 million for one fight. And the same thing is happening now. The UFC is not getting a single cut. If they were slightly more respectful, slightly more open to some of these things, they'd be walking away with a $50 million payday for promoting the same thing.
And I think Dana White will be kicking himself.
Yeah.
I do.
Sorry, I didn't realize we were in between bits. I took a drink there. That was a good transition.
No, I do think Dana White will be kicking himself because, as you just said, he could have got a pretty hefty cut, and now he's getting sweet nothing.
Nothing at all.
If they put on a really big card on either just before or just after to say, look, times are hard. This is going to be probably a $60 pay-per-view. We're going to put a $60 pay-per-view and stack it the week after or the week before, sorry. Pick a pay-per-view. Well, I mean, I think October, November, you've got Jones versus Miocic. Do you want to spend, if you've only got $60 to spend within a month period, do you want to spend it on Jones versus Miocic, which will probably get another title fight on that card? You'll probably get 3 or 4 big stars on that card because it's the 30th anniversary in Madison Square Garden, blah, 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 blah. Or do you want to spend it on Fury and Ngannou? That's a decision that people have got to make. But if the UFC are sensible, they'll stack that Madison Square Garden card and say, if you've only got $60 to spend on a pay-per-view, this is the one you want to be watching.
With competition, the people who win should be the viewers because things are getting competitive. When Affliction and Fedor were promoting, the UFC would put Anderson Silva on free TV. That's how well we were treated at one point as viewers of the sport. We could watch Anderson Silva for free at the same time Fedor was fighting. Like, what kind of nights were we having back in the day? And now we got Apex cards featuring 41-year-old Holly Holm against an up-and-comer, Mayra Bueno Silva, who I've always been a fan of her. I like her a lot. We'll talk about this fight and the Della Maddalena fight, but what do you think? Mayra Bueno Silva winning via submission in the second round. This was a statement and a half, wasn't it? This is a big deal, not just to defeat Holly Holm, to submit her. And I will say that for the UFCs, all of their foibles, all of their flaws, when stuff like this happens, the UFC is quite good at spiking the football. We got a young girl who just put her name on this. She just went over the top against an aged veteran. Perfect. We'll get together. We'll promote a bunch of stuff. We'll get some trailers together. The UFC is quite good at when this stuff happens. They are good at promoting when this happens. But I'm excited for the future of her. What do you do with Mayra now? What do you think of the match, and what does the future hold?
Yeah, I think it was a really good performance. I think I want to go on in a minute to talk about Holly Holm. I'll say it now. I think that she will wake up on Sunday morning and be frustrated about her own performance. She went out all guns blazing in the first round. I think she still probably lost that first round. The more damaging shots were landed by Bueno Silva. Yeah. Then that second round, I think Bueno Silva was arguably slightly surprised about how easy the choke was to get. It almost, how we often see when people are up against it, in the defensive position up against the cage, they'll throw the arm round to try and, threaten the guillotine. Obviously, this has gone down as a ninja joke, but throw the arm around, threaten the guillotine. They'll throw up a Kimura trap just to sort of almost scare the attacking fighter into, right, I don't want to get stuck in this submission. And Holly just didn't read the situation. She kind of just put her head and her neck out there. Bueno Silva's sort of like, okay, let's not forget, I'm the submission. Whoa, I'm the submission girl here. I've got seven submissions in, but you're giving me your head. I'm just, okay. I'm gonna Oh, you tapped. What's happened here? Like, this isn't. You're supposed to be a former champion, a former multiple time title challenger, one of the best in the. I think she was ranked 3 going into the fight. Holly Holm and Bueno Silva. I think, like I say, I think she was kind of a little. I mean, maybe she wasn't, because fighters, these fighters are manifesting these things. But I think she was a little. I mean, from a viewer perspective, a little bit surprised. We've seen Holly Holm in there with some phenomenal submission artists, phenomenal fighters, and just to kind of just sort of stick her neck and shoulders out there and say sort of like, oh, look at all this neck that you can choke. And Bueno Silva's just kind of like, oh, look at all that neck that I can. Oh, I'm going to threaten it, Holly. I'm threatening it, Holly. This is me threatening your neck. This is when you back up. This is when you push away and create distance.
It almost looked too easy, didn't it? Like, she put in the choke and it just was like, she was like doing an instructional, and she kind of did it slowly to make sure all the viewers at home understood what was going on. Like, it was slow.
And it was kind of just like, this is when you guys, look, if I'm threatening this is when you create distance. Okay.
Yeah.
She's not. Okay. Bang. And choke on like that. Eighth career submission for Bueno Silva. And the future is finally bright at bantamweight, because so long has it been dominated by Amanda Nunes. Obviously, as we know, as it stands, we don't have a bantamweight champion. Amanda Nunes has retired from the sport. She's relinquished that belt. We're assuming it's going to be Juliana Pena versus Raquel Pennington for the belt. I imagine that one will maybe be in Abu Dhabi, or as the second title fight in November.
Mm-hmm.
I got very little interest in that. I want to see Bueno Silva.
I agree. I like Bueno Silva.
Is that recency bias? Probably, but to have, I think, 4 fights at bantamweight now, 3 of which are submissions. Armbar, knee bar, ninja choke, a fight of the night, 2 performances of the night.
Yep.
Am I more entertained about seeing her than do I think that she beats Juliana Pena? Yes, I do. I think she's more capable on the feet than Juliana Pena. And I know Juliana Pena is essentially a wrestler, but if she's sensible, she does not go to the ground with Bueno Silva, because we can see what happens. Knee bar, arm bar, ninja choke. Mm-hmm. Raquel Pennington, I think, is a slightly tougher fight for Bueno Silva, because she's a little bit more capable on the feet. But again, the roots, I think if she panics, she goes into her shell and starts wrestling. Bueno Silva's a phenomenal on the ground. And, looking at the UFC rankings, Bueno Silva's now gone up 7 rankings. She's taken Holly Holm's number 3 spot. So it's Pena, Pennington, Bueno Silva, Ketlin Vieira, who competes this weekend. If she doesn't fight for the title next, maybe she fights Irene Aldana. But Bueno Silva's hot at the moment. She's in a hot streak. She's fighting fairly regularly. She's fought, I think, twice this year already. Yeah, she fought February, Lena Landsberg, knee bar, Holly Holm, ninja choke. I want to see her again this year. And if it's not for the title, it's probably going to be it depends how this fight this weekend between Pani Kianzad and Ketlin Vieira goes, but that's buried right down on the prelim. So the UFC clearly aren't too bothered about these girls. Obviously, Ketlin Vieira is coming off the loss. Irene Aldana just competed for the belt, but I think she's injured or maybe had surgery. I saw a picture of her on crutches. I think Bueno Silva's too deserving of a title shot to be in there as the alternate just to weigh in. I think she's too deserving of a title shot to take it on short notice. Yeah. I think she's too good. And I'm really excited about the future of Bueno Silva, because let's be honest, she's good. And it's refreshing for the women's bantamweight division to have, 2 or 3 girls that can potentially hold the belt and swap between them. And, even coming through, Norma Dumont obviously put on a pretty, it was a mere performance this weekend at bantamweight, but she competed at featherweight against another girl who's ranked at Chelsea Chandler, ranked at bantamweight after 1 win. They both fought at featherweight, but she's moved up 1 in the rankings. We've got contenders in the bantamweight division. Looking much further ahead, obviously, we've got Melissa, announced last night that Melissa Mullins is competing on October 14th, I think. We've got, I can't remember the girl's name, but Russian Ronda. She looked bang average in a UFC debut, and I think that's work for Melissa. We'll look to jump on with Melissa, who I think is going to put on a proper show. And I know she's going out to France to train with Manon Fiorot in a few weeks.
Interesting.
Or maybe at the end of this. Well, anyway, she's going out to train, and she's going over to the US to train with some of the girls over there as well. Easy work for Melissa, that. But let's not forget, Chelsea Chandler got ranked in the top 15 of women's bantamweight with 1 win, and it was against a girl who all but was a corpse on the scales. Melissa could easily be ranked in the top 15 after just 1 win, and she'll continue to be undefeated. So we'll obviously go into much more detail. Hopefully, we'll get Melissa back on the show before she makes a debut. There's no reason why not. But going back, there are now contenders at bantamweight. Bueno Silva is probably the most exciting. Nobody on the MMA Sucka staff picked her to win, and I'm happy to eat humble pie and say that was a big mistake because she looked good.
Speaking of, there was another piece of news that we missed because there's some weeks in MMA where nothing happens, and then there's some weeks where everything is happening at the same time. What do you do with the light heavyweight title? Jamahal Hill now injured his ankle and vacated the title. Weirdly, Yuri Prochazka injured his shoulder and vacated the title just before him. What a weird division. This division is cursed since John Jones has left. But the only people fighting in it, Yuri Prochazka is not booked to fight anytime soon. It's Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira. Do you put a title on that? There's Magomed Ankalaev floating around as well. What do you do if you were the UFC matchmakers to make this division work? Are you, I would almost say the Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira fight. Why not? I love that fight. What an interesting, I don't know. I think that'd be a fun fight. And Alex Pereira being a 2-division champion in MMA would be amazing. But I just don't know what to do with this division. You know what I mean?
100%. And if I answer the question that you first asked, what do I do if I'm the UFC? I panic because I am panicking. Alex Pereira coming off a knockout loss at weight below, could potentially be fighting for a title. Blachowicz coming off a lackluster performance.
It was pretty lame.
Let's be honest, he lost that fight against Ankalaev.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that Jamahal Hill was given the title opportunity, 2-3 weeks later, the beginning of the year in Brazil against Glover. I think maybe I make that fight for an interim title because, let's be honest, it is an interim title. The champion is Yuri Prochazka. He's injured. The next champion is Jamahal Hill. He vacates because he's injured. We can't then have a third champion because the champion should be the best guy or girl in the division. We can't have a third guy holding the light heavyweight title who has not beaten the other 2 guys that held the belt. Jamahal Hill was always going to face Yuri Prochazka next. Yeah. Due to injury, he can't do that. I'm all behind Jamahal Hill vacating because why hold the division up? Yep. Yuri Prochazka will be back hopefully by the end of the year. Stick an interim title on Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira.
Why not?
The winner then faces Yuri for the undisputed belt at the end of the year. That's probably
I agree with you. Yeah.
Whether the UFC do that, I'm not so sure. You know what they're like for not, just sort of giving out belts a la the BMF belt. And could you realistically have a pay-per-view where the BMF belt is taking precedent over an actual interim title? The UFC going to do what the UFC want to do, but I wouldn't. That's a tough sell for me, but it is what it is. They will do whatever they want to do because it's the UFC.
Yeah, and one of the problems is that Alex Pereira Jan Blachowicz fight is already booked, because if that wasn't booked, you have way more options. You would probably do a small tournament, like a mini tournament, to figure out who's going on, because a lot of these guys Blachowicz, Krylov, Johnny Walker are all on win streaks right now, and then you have Magomed Ankalaev just still kind of hanging out.
What's he doing? He hasn't fought since last December. He's not scheduled to fight. Not even scheduled. Come on, if you really about that life and want to be the champion, Step up now. Like this is your time to say, right, I'll take on anyone on short notice.
Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira. That's not a competitive fight in any way, style wise. Like if Alex Pereira never fights Magomed Ankalaev, he can maybe be champion in that division. In all honesty, it's if some, even if like Anthony Smith fights Alex Pereira, he'll just wrestle him. You know what I mean? He has to.
Jan Blachowicz will do at the end of the month.
Yeah,
if he's sensible, he does that. How late notice can you put on a 5-round fight? I know Jan Blachowicz will take it. Whether Alex Pereira will take it, up a weight class, so he's having to kind of put on weight, put on muscle. I know he's a big guy anyway, but it's the whole difference from going up. And it's not just a featherweight to lightweight, a 10 pound. It's 20 pounds, 185 to 205. Yeah. And Jan Blachowicz isn't stepping in there at 205. Jan Blachowicz is stepping in there at 220, 225 maybe. I know he's not the biggest light heavyweight, but he's stepping in there big. Yeah. Alex Pereira's got to put on all that weight to cut that weight to put it back on. Then he's got to, expand his gas tank over 5 rounds. I think it may be a hard sell to Alex Pereira because it's a hard thing to do, not only to put on that much weight, but then to increase your sort of output by another 2 rounds. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens. I don't think they'll slap a belt on it. I think it's slightly too late notice, but maybe they put another. We're running out of time in the year. Really, the Boston card in August has already got 2 title fights. So obviously we've got the women's strawweight and the men's bantamweight. The Abu Dhabi card hasn't got a single title fight booked. We're assuming it'll be Islam Makhachev, but who does he face? We'll have to wait and see. But we're running out. We can't have just no champion. We can have an interim champion. It's not the same, but we can't have no champion whatsoever in the light heavyweight division for too much longer, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's a fun little, what do we do here? We have a few moving parts, the Pereira factor, the Ankalaev factor. It's fun stuff. Anyway, let's get back to it. Jack Della, Maddalena, and Basil Hafez go to war over 3 rounds, end up having judging controversy in the end. I don't think the right guy won. But Basil Hafez making his debut in the UFC, he came out of the gate. He ran at him for a takedown. Jack Della Maddalena played the game and went for a guillotine a bunch of times, just giving up his back like you were talking about. Maybe don't be silly and jump the gilly is what his corner kept saying to him, which is hilarious. Yeah. Ultimately, there was some judging controversy. The right guy won, right? Jack won 2 rounds.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think there's even an argument that he won 3 rounds. I mean,
potentially, yeah.
Definitely won. Go on. He definitely won 2. I don't think there's much of a, there's not a strong argument like Jack Della Maddalena Basil was robbed. Maddalena got a homer decision. Well, let's not forget, you probably got a little bit of a flatter performance from Jack Della Maddalena because he's been in Vegas for an extra week now. He's had to cut weight. He's had to prolong his weight cut for an extra week. He's also, we forget, Basil stepped in there on short notice on 5 days. Well, yeah, but Jack is also preparing for someone different on 5 days notice. And I know it might, he's been on a tear and he's been finishing guy after guy, submitting, knocking out. I think this might be good for Jack Della Maddalena because now guys won't be so scared to face him. He can be taken down. He doesn't always have the best fight IQ. Sean Brady will be licking his lips at that. And probably be thinking, look, get me over to Sydney in what 8 weeks, 9 weeks, because I could do that to Jack Della Maddalena, but I could maintain it over 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I say, it was close. I mean, I want to see this Basil Hafez fight again. I think he's entertaining. He trains with Justin Gaethje, and let's not forget he went 15 hard minutes. They weren't 15, There were 15 hard minutes on 5 days' notice. Imagine him with a full camp, not having to. He's ripped to bits, shredded to bits, and stepping in there with Jack Della Maddalena. He's not stepping in there just with any old guy. He's stepping in there with probably the hottest prospect the UFC's seen in a number of years, and he's the only guy in the UFC thus far to go the distance with JDM. So it's just put some respect on Basil's name. He didn't win the fight. I don't think there was that much controversy. I think on paper,
I didn't realize it was a split decision, which means one of the judges gave it to Basil. And I think that was the controversy. And I understand the controversy now. Yeah, that was a dumb decision.
Yeah, I'd like to see the official scorecard, see which rounds were scored for Basil, because I don't didn't see him winning 2 rounds. That first round, yeah, he probably
yeah.
but Della Maddalena, I know the fight isn't won on stats, but 41 total strikes to 12 in the first round, 47 to 29 in the second, 61 to 7 in the third. It's a hard sell for Basil to have won 2 of those 3 rounds. But like I say, he steps in on 5 days' notice, and gives a solid account of himself.
Yeah.
Really, really good stuff.
Anything else on that Fight Night card that you see that you like before we move into the UFC in London?
I think it's just the UFC in London now to I want to say get excited about, but I'm gonna struggle to get excited about UFC London.
Hey, there's good, there's bad. Definitely the UFC in London, since they started making their comeback in March of last year, has been diminishing returns, to say the least. The Tom Aspinall show, I love. I like that Tom Aspinall is just headlining time in, time out, as he well deserves. His last fight was an injury against Curtis Blades, which is just unfortunate because it was cooking up to be a really interesting fight, and it was an interesting question going in. Now, hopefully everything's healed. Hopefully his knee is okay because he's a young guy with a lot of speed. He's going to be fighting Marcin Tybura. You have to think if everything's healthy, this is a slam dunk for Tom Aspinall, right?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, we haven't seen him compete for a year now. He injured himself last July. We then had the pay-per-view in March between Edwards and Usman, and we had the Gaethje and Fiziev fight on that. And now we're returning back with a much more sort of British-friendly card.
Yes.
The thing is, for me, these are knockover fights for the Brits. This is almost boxing matchmaking. Like you say, Tom Aspinall runs through Marcin Tybura. Yes, he's winning. He's won what? 7 of his last 8 fights.
Yeah.
But the guys that he's beaten, Alexander Romanov. I mean, yeah. Blagor Ivanov, Walt Harris, Greg Hardy, Ben Rothwell, Maxim Grishin, Sergei Spivak's a good win. And then he lost to Alexander Volkov. Tom Aspinall is levels above all these guys. And I know he's still early in his UFC career, but let's be honest, if he would have beat Curtis Blades in July last year, he's competing for the belt probably this time, around now.
Absolutely.
Didn't go his way. Obviously, he blew his knee out. Let's hope that knee injury is kind of sorted out. Tom is just so much faster. He's going to light Tybura up for the first round and finish him in the second. Whether it be on the feet, whether it be he takes him to the ground, he does what he wants with Tybura. Because Tybura isn't an elite guy. The fight probably makes sense because of where Tom is at his career now. He's coming off the injury. The heavyweight division is still kind of up in the air because we've got John Jones versus Miocic. We've still got guys. Taito Avas is booked for the Sydney card in a few months. Yep. You've still got Curtis Blades in and around there, but he's coming off the loss to Pavlovich. Pavlovich is obviously, in theory, the next guy. Yeah. It's all over the place. And it's, like I say, coming off an injury, it makes a lot of sense. It's just not competitive. And it's the same with the co-main event. I don't see the co-main event being competitive either. And it's kind of a massive disappointment for me, and it should be for Molly McCann as well. She's a co-main event. Shouldn't be anywhere near a co-main event, in my opinion. But she's coming off a loss to Erin Blanchfield, and that wasn't even remotely close. What I will say is that they've given her a fight that on paper she should be absolutely running through.
Right.
She's facing Julia Starolenko. Julia Starolenko is 10-7, right? In her MMA, not in her UFC career, in her MMA career. In the UFC, she's 1-4. I just don't get it. And I believe her last fight is the fight that she passed out on the scales, and they had to make a catch weight. I can't remember with Julia Starolenko. I know she passed out.
Yeah,
she passed out on the scales beforehand, trying to make 135. She then had a catch weight against Chelsea Chandler last time out. She lost that by TKO in the first round. Now she's dropping down for the first time in her career. She's fought as high as featherweight in the tough final. Now she's dropping down to 125. I mean, it's just not a good look for the UFC, in my opinion. Why we're doing this, I don't know. There's plenty of contenders at 125 that would have taken on Molly McCann in a co-main event in London. Plenty.
And also the position on the card as the co-main event is such an odd one because you got like Nathaniel Wood versus Andre Fili are competing for a ranked position in a really competitive division. That's a really important fight. That's a great fight. Even Jai Herbert versus Faraz Zayam. That's arguably two guys who are competing for top position. But then as we keep combing it away, like Lerone Murphy's on it. If he wins, maybe he's ranked. Also, most of this card are unranked fighters if we're competing for a bunch of ranked positions. And I really like Nathaniel Wood and Andre Fili. That's a great fight. That should be the co-main event. Yeah. Having Molly McCann and Julia as the co-main. Oh my God. I love it.
The middleweight debut of Paul Craig on this fight card. And he's facing Andre Muniz. Yes, Andre Muniz lost last time out.
He's going to miss weight. There's no way. But, he's so big.
If you look at who Andre, he beat Uriah Hall, he beat Eric Anders, he beat Jacare. Yeah. This is a legitimate guy. It's a legitimate test for Paul Craig, who, like you say, making his middleweight debut. I don't think he's ever made middleweight so he's never made middleweight in his career. He's coming off 2 losses. He's going to be so motivated and fighting back in the UK. That should be co-main event. If Nathaniel Wood isn't co-main event, that should be Molly McCann. Give her a main card fight, yeah, but don't put her in the co-main event. Is it because she gets the crowd going? Well, I just want to share my screen with you because
there's you live in London, I live a little north of there, but there's no buzz for this event at all. And the other two had buzz. Yeah.
I mean, this
there's on screen.
For context, all the blue are seats that were available.
That's bad.
All of the blue are seats that are available. All of this available seating. All of the blue available. And then, but the thing is, you look at the for example, the cheapest ticket, £118. But where does that get you? Section 410. So you're talking here, that's £118 seat.
That's so expensive. That's really pricey.
If you want to get the best seats available for UFC London, I mean, you're looking at, say you want to sit cage side. Look, all of these seats and this is ringside essentially.
Yeah.
This is ringside seating, and it has not sold well because they haven't done it properly. They've kept the same prices as the pay-per-view in March.
Yes,
far from a pay-per-view card, and there's some competitive fights on the card. Don't get me wrong, but you look at the prelims I like a lot of the guys in the prelims because we've got Mick Parkin making his debut. Mark Jacasio versus Joel Alvarez, a phenomenal fight. Danny Roberts and Davey Grant, never in a boring fight. You've got, like I say, the ranked fight between Ketlin Vieira and Pani Kianzad. Chris Duncan's making his second appearance against Yanal Ashmunov, who obviously knocked out Sam Patterson in March. You've got the strawweight or the UFC debut, of Shauna Bannon, who there's a lot of hype coming out of Ireland about her, the Invicta star. You're trying to charge people sort of a lot of money to go and see this. And it's not selling. And there's I've heard that they're even going to close the top ringer of the O2 and sort of push everybody down. Well, rightfully so, because if it's not, you don't want to have a fight night like that in the UK. There's a cost of living crisis in the UK as well. And you're trying to charge people £120 for a ticket. The first UFC London that I attended was £60 or £70. And I can't. Jimmy Manuwa versus Corey Anderson.
That's a good fight.
Pick it on the card. I think you had Nathaniel Wood on that card. And I was just trying to find the card because I'm sure there's there was names on that card.
I'll give you one because I'm actually doing the same thing that you are. So let's do. So the very first time the UFC ever went to the O2 Arena in history was in 2007. Now you tell me what's a better card. So in the headliner was Rampage Jackson versus Dan Henderson. Holy shit, that's a good. Michael Bisping versus Matt Hamill. That had controversy for days. Czech Congo versus Mirko Krokop was the third best fight of the night. Marcus Davis, Paul Taylor, Houston Alexander, Alessio Sakar, Gleason Tebow, and Terry Edom were fighting on the prelims because of how good this card was. Thiago Silva was on it, and then that's kind of it for now. Dennis Seaver was on the card too. So that was the first time they went to that was in 2007. And I bet tickets were way cheaper back then because no one knew what the hell this was. But man, we have gone downhill.
I mean, like I say, the first time I went, March 18th, 2017, headline Jimmy Manuel versus Corey Anderson.
It's a good
Co-main event, Gunnar Nelson versus Alan Joban.
Good one.
Marlon Vera versus Brad Pickett in Brad Pickett's last ever fight. And then Arnold
Great.
Allen versus Makwan Amirkhani.
So good.
On the card. You had Leon Edwards versus Vicente Luque. That was the fourth fight on the card. And I paid, I think, £60, maybe £70. You're asking me to pay double for that. You're asking me to pay double to see Molly McCann in a co-main event after she's coming off a loss and the girl that she's fighting is coming off a loss. For context, you know, Gunnar Nelson on that Fight Night card was coming off a win. Alan Joban, I believe, was also coming off a win. Yeah, well, Alan Joban was coming off 3 wins. So, you know, even going back as far, I know the UFC have to go back to London because it's probably contractually obliged, but it's not like you spent a lot of money on the card that's just happened.
I know.
Yes, you know, you're not going to have a Leon Edwards on a Fight Night card. Paddy Pimblett's injured.
Yeah.
But there's European fights. Yeah, exactly. But there's European. It's possible to make a better card than this. I know we're bashing it. Nathaniel Wood versus Andre Feely is a phenomenal fight. I think Nathaniel runs through him. You know, he looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at some of the, you know, you've got debutants on the card. You've got it's a very Brit-friendly card, which is fine. But to have, I think, 4 ranked people, you've got 3 fighters that feature ranked fighters. Yes, it's a Fight Night card, but that's just not good enough for me. I think, and it's completely different from it being a Fight Night card in the US because they get them all the time. Every single week, pretty much, is an Apex card or they're going somewhere in the US. Now, don't get me wrong. Do I think that UFC London will deliver, and do I think there'll be some phenomenal performances? Yes, I do. I really do think that there'll be some really big performances from the guys and girls that are competing on the card because they always turn up in London. However, I just don't think that the star power and the name is there to be charging £120 for a ticket, and it shows that it's full of empty slots.
It's half empty at this point. That's embarrassing. It's a major arena that they've sold out 3 times in the last 18 months or something like that.
It's been impossible to get it sold out within 5 minutes of tickets. Yeah. And now it's tickets have been out since probably March, probably not, you know, March. It's probably May, not long after the pay-per-view, and they can't give them away. They've dropped the price even. That's a dropped price.
Yeah. And like even like you said, if you are living in the US, like you can fly down to Vegas at any, like that's the cheapest place in the US that you can fly to. You can see a pretty good UFC event almost anytime you want live if you really wanted to. In the UK, they come here twice a year, if that much, if they're that generous. So if you don't really bring the action, it's a real big letdown, isn't it?
Well, for sure. And you know, you have 2 European cards here. You've got the UK card in March and July, and then you also have the French card. So you've got three cards here, but the French one's fairly new.
That's true.
This is people traveling from all over Europe, in theory, all over Europe. And because that's their closest card. Their closest UFC card will be UFC London. You've got, you know, Joel Alvarez from Spain on there who should bring, you've got Sean O'Bannon who will bring a load of guys and girls over from Ireland. You've got guys, you know, you've got a big Scottish following with Chris Duncan and Paul Craig. You've got all the guys from Liverpool coming down for Molly McCann. You've got all the guys from up north coming down for Tom Aspinall. You've got Marcin Tybura from Poland, all the guys coming across. And that's how many tickets you've sold. That kind of speaks volumes for it. That you've got a big pool of people trying to come to UFC London, and yet the card itself is, you're probably saving your money for the Paris card in September.
And that's the thing. I really missed the UFC's expansion phase where they were spending a lot of money to travel all over the world and open up new markets. And they were introducing MMA everywhere they went. And it was an uphill battle, but they were kind of willing to do it. They put that challenge on themselves. Like they were doing shows in Poland just before KSW was. They were doing shows in Germany when it was actually technically illegal, and it still kind of is in Germany. But like what we just saw with UFC International Fight Week 2 weeks ago, where they have a fan convention and they actually have a media convention where they do hundreds of interviews, they do red carpet events. That's what the UFC used to do every time they went to a new market. And a new market was sometimes just Columbus, Ohio, was sometimes just Miami. And that was a new market for them. But they used to travel the entire, like, they did shows in Copenhagen and Sweden and the Czech Republic and places that you wouldn't quite imagine were big. They did shows in Prague more than once. Now they're not doing their expansion phase, and all they're doing is London and Paris. And they're like, yep, that's all of Europe. Europe is covered now.
Even in the UK, they did Manchester as recently as 5-10 years. Well, whenever Bisping was the champion,
Yep.
They did Glasgow. They used to do Nottingham for Dan Hardy. I think they did. Well, they did Liverpool for Darren Till versus Thompson. I think they've done a Birmingham show before.
Yep.
You know, like you say, they did Gdansk for Darren Till again. They did Prague with Cannonier and Hermansen.
And that's just Europe. We're not even talking about all the places they went in Brazil or China or like different cities all over Asia. Like, yeah.
And that's just stopped in the UK. It's UFC London twice a year in the O2 Arena, and now Paris once a year. That's it. I mean, they've just stopped doing any shows outside of London, which, you know, it is the capital, so it does make sense to do shows in there. But we've got a champion from Birmingham and multiple football stadiums in Birmingham. Work that out. Like, you know, Aston Villa Stadium, Birmingham Stadium, you know, even where I'm from, Coventry Stadium could easily host a UFC event. It hosts massive concerts all the time. Harry Styles, Arctic Monkeys alike, and you're trying to tell me that they wouldn't sell out the you know, Coventry's football stadium for a homecoming for Leon Edwards, who I know he fought in London, but it's just not the same. He could fight in Coventry, he could fight in Birmingham. Coventry's 15 minutes away, half an hour on the train max from Birmingham. You're trying to tell me that Leon Edwards wouldn't sell out a stadium in Coventry, in Birmingham, even, you know, Nottingham's still the Midlands. Like, he would sell it out, but the UFC just aren't. It's London, it's Paris, and it's nothing else.
Yeah, it's nothing. Even Bellator's out here on the road doing multiple shows in Rome, of all places.
Bellator did a card a few years ago in Birmingham. Yes, it was a much smaller show, but why can they do it and the UFC can't? It's questionable, but it is what it is, isn't it?
Bellator, maybe not right now, because they stopped because they knew that they're being bought out right now. But they did shows monthly in Ireland, monthly in the UK. Even if they were smaller shows, you're servicing these markets and you're really trying to make a name for yourself. But yeah, once they knew they were being bought out, they haven't done anything in a while. They're doing stuff with Ryzen because it's kind of easy. Like, someone else promotes it and they just send their fighters to it. But yeah, I guess that seems like it's fully greenlit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just it's a shame, really, because, you know, Bellator were breaking into places that the UFC weren't. They went to France first. They went to, you know, they put on a number of shows in Italy. They went back to, they're constantly doing shows in the 3 Arena in Dublin.
Yes.
And the UFC just aren't. Absolutely. The UFC just are not doing that. And it shows. It really does show that, you know, not everyone can afford to get down to London and pay London prices. You know, I mean, there's a train strike this weekend, so it's going to be even more difficult for people to get down to London.
But if you were trying to avoid train strikes, you would never do a show in the UK. That is impossible.
Exactly, it's impractical to do a show in the UK at all. But that remains, you know, the card, I think, will deliver. Tom Aspinall will win emphatically in the main event. Molly McCann will probably put on a show. I think it could have been better. Nathaniel Wood will put on a performance. Lerone Murphy has to be better than he was in London last time out. But they could have done better. I really think they could have done better. But, you know, like I say, it's one of those where we just get a number of phenomenal performances when we're saying, yes, they're not the biggest names, but look at what he did, look at what she did, most probably. And, you know, I'm looking forward to sitting here next week and talking about it. With that being said, we've got a big preview next week, I think, for the BMF title bout. So it's
I'm excited for that. I like this kind of stuff. You know, I was one of those guys, I think, when we started the show, of like, nope, just get the fighters in the cage. I don't care what's going on. And then we got a bunch of Apex cards, and I quickly realized like, no, I do like the pageantry. I like walkouts. I like special effects. The BMF belt is so corny. I kind of like it. You know what I mean? I like it. It's fine.
Exactly. I mean, if you just look, you've got Aspinall versus Tybura, then you've got the BMF bout, then you've got Sam Hagen versus Nurmagomedov, Luque versus Dos Anjos, and then UFC 292. That's all within a month. So the UFC are doing a good job, but just not on a smaller scale. If you really dig down into the prelims and whatnot, a lot of these fighters aren't finishers on the prelims of UFC London, so it could be a long night. So if you are, if you are gonna watch it, be prepared for a potentially long night until it gets to the main event.
Yeah. Well, let's get out of here. What do you got writing this week? What are you publishing this week? What do you got going on?
We're just going to be looking ahead to UFC London. It is a reasonable card. It's a fight night card. It just hasn't sold because the UFC have kept the same price as the pay-per-view as they did for the pay-per-view. So I will be looking at fights on there.
Sure.
And then it's all steam ahead for the BMF title bout next week and Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence that we'll touch on briefly next week as well.
That's a big one, isn't it? That's what people have been waiting for in the boxing world.
Finally.
All right, good stuff. Frazer Krohn, appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.